A collection of Egyptian artifacts discovered in a sunken ancient city.
Beneath the calm waters of Egypt's coast lies a city once thought to be myth.
Secrets of ancient Egypt, which for thousands of years lay submerged beneath the Mediterranean.
Temples, ships, and treasures vanished for 1,000 years.
They were found in 2002 on a sunken Egyptian ship.
When experts sent a drone into the ruins, what it revealed rewrote history and raised terrifying questions about our future. Legends beneath the waves. For centuries, whispers told of a city swallowed by the sea. Ancient Greek historians described Heracleion as a glittering port where merchants from every corner of the Mediterranean crowded the harbors. Egyptian records, meanwhile, spoke of Thonis, the gateway to the Nile, where temples towered above waterways and colossal statues guarded the shore. Yet no one could agree. Were these two separate cities, or simply two names for the same place? Herodotus, the father of history, wrote of a city alive with trade, faith, and diplomacy. Egyptian inscriptions echoed him, noting its role as the kingdom's maritime lifeline. But time blurred truth into myth. Coastlines shifted, earthquakes rattled the delta, and rising seas crept further inland. Maps grew vague, stories contradictory. To many, Heracleion, or Thonis, became little more than a legend, a ghost scribbled in scrolls. Generations of explorers searched the Nile Delta in vain. Without ruins to study, scholars dismissed the tale as folklore, yet the legend endured, retold in fragments across cultures. Why? Because it carried a haunting contradiction. The city was too central to Egypt's history to have never existed, and too absent from the land to still be real. Somewhere between myth and history, it waited. The rediscovery in 2000. The legend waited until the dawn of the 21st century to reveal itself. In 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team from the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology launched an ambitious survey of Abu Qir Bay, 5 miles off Egypt's modern coast. What they were searching for was uncertain. What they found exceeded imagination. Using sonar equipment, they traced faint outlines hidden beneath thick layers of clay and sand. At first, the shapes seemed like chance patterns, but the more the scans repeated, the clearer the geometry became. Streets, canals, and foundations emerged like a ghost city preserved on the seabed. It was vast, larger than anyone dared expect. When divers finally descended, the discoveries turned whispers into certainty. 3 colossal statues, each carved from red granite, lay toppled but not broken. A pharaoh, his queen, and the Nile god, Hapi. Their inscriptions, though worn by centuries underwater, still proclaimed Egypt's power and devotion. Nearby, a massive stele inscribed with decrees of Pharaoh Nectanebo I carried both names, Thonis in Egyptian, Heracleion in Greek. At last, the two cities were proven to be one. For archaeologists, it was as though history had bent back into shape. The lost port that once funneled trade, taxation, and diplomacy into Egypt was real, and it had been hiding beneath the waves for over a millennium. Heracleion was no longer a myth. It was a city reborn from the sea. The science of finding the lost. Finding a lost metropolis beneath the sea is not a matter of luck. It is a precise science where technology replaces shovels and satellites guide the hands of explorers. Before divers even touch the water, teams must map a hidden landscape buried under centuries of mud. The process begins with side-scan sonar. Towed behind a research vessel, it sweeps the seabed with sound waves, painting images from echoes. On a blank ocean floor, most patterns curve naturally. Straight lines, sharp corners, or rectangular shadows stand out like fingerprints of human design. Next comes the magnetometer, an instrument that detects subtle changes in Earth's magnetic field. Buried anchors, bronze weights, even iron-rich stone blocks disturb the signal, revealing what the eye cannot see. To probe deeper, researchers deploy sub-bottom profilers. These devices push low-frequency pulses through layers of sediment, exposing structures entombed beneath the seabed, foundations of temples, ship hulls, or walls long forgotten. But discovery demands precision. Ordinary GPS can be meters off. Differential GPS narrows the margin to centimeters, allowing researchers to return to the same anomaly again and again. Once identified, remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, descend into the murk. Outfitted with cameras and robotic arms, they slip into places too tight or dangerous for divers, recording and sometimes recovering fragile artifacts. In this way, sonar images transform into city maps, and faint signals into monuments. Piece by piece, the sea gives back what it once consumed. Treasures pulled from the clay. When divers finally reached the heart of the ruins, they did not find pristine temples standing tall or gleaming statues awaiting rescue. They found a world muffled by centuries of mud, where broken blocks lay scattered and artifacts were sealed within thick layers of clay. Yet beneath the silt, history waited. Near the fallen walls of the Grand Temple of Amun, small objects began to surface. Silver ritual instruments, bowls, ladles, offering plates, emerged with their ornate designs still visible despite the centuries. Delicate alabaster jars, likely filled once with sacred oils or perfumes, revealed the temple's sacred economy. These were not ordinary household tools. They were treasures meant for gods, entombed in disaster rather than preserved by design. A short distance away, another discovery deepened the mystery. Divers uncovered the remains of a Greek sanctuary dedicated to Aphrodite. Here lay bronze statuettes, imported ceramics, and fragments of marble. This was not simply an Egyptian city. It was a crossroads where sailors and traders from the Mediterranean mingled their gods with Egypt's own. The sanctuary also contained weapons, spears, short swords, and arrowheads, suggesting mercenaries once stood guard over this fragile hub of wealth and culture. In another sector, a wooden galley more than 80 feet long lay crushed beneath collapsed stone blocks, its timbers remarkably preserved. Experts believe it was trapped mid-docking, buried instantly as the harbor crumbled. Alongside these grand finds were humbler relics, woven baskets of fruit seeds, still intact after 2,000 years. Fragile, organic, and profoundly human, they whispered what people ate, traded, and carried with them. Together, these discoveries painted a portrait of a city alive with ritual, commerce, and daily survival until catastrophe struck. The drone mission and the terrifying reveal. The morning was calm, the waters of Abu Qir Bay still as glass. But beneath the surface, a new kind of exploration was about to begin. Instead of sending divers into the murk, the team deployed a state-of-the-art underwater drone, guided from the deck by archaeologist Frank Gaudio himself. The drone descended through green haze, its lights piercing the gloom. At first, the camera revealed little: sediment-covered slabs, drifting seagrass, the occasional fish darting past. Then, the seabed changed. Massive granite blocks appeared, yet they were not scattered randomly. They were stacked in interlocking patterns, as though engineered, their geometry too deliberate to be explained by natural collapse. The drone's camera panned slowly across the formation, revealing faint carvings etched into stone, almost erased by centuries underwater. But these inscriptions lay in a sector of seabed that maps insisted was empty. What the team was seeing was not a fragment of the known city. It was evidence of an entire district, previously uncharted and perhaps even more extensive than what had already been uncovered. The realization was unsettling. If this section had collapsed as violently as the rest of Heracleion, then the scale of destruction was greater than anyone believed. Soil liquefaction, earthquakes, and sudden flooding could reduce entire neighborhoods to rubble within minutes. Geologists on the team warned that the same conditions, though rare, still exist in the Nile Delta today. The ruins were more than ancient history. They were a reminder that the forces capable of erasing Heracleion could one day threaten modern cities along Egypt's coast. What began as discovery now felt like a warning. Preservation and the race against time. The drone footage left no doubt. The site was larger, more fragile, and more at risk than ever imagined. In the days that followed, the mission shifted from discovery to preservation. Archaeologists and marine engineers worked side by side, balancing the excitement of new finds with the responsibility of protecting them. Using multi-beam sonar and photogrammetry, they built a digital twin of the ruins, a 3D model that could be explored safely on land. This allowed researchers to study the structures without disturbing them further, and ensured that sudden storms or shifting currents would not erase crucial details. On the seabed, divers began stabilization. Weighted sandbags were positioned to prevent loose debris from sliding into sensitive corridors. Markers were installed to guide future teams back to precise points of interest. Every move was cautious, designed to minimize the risk of damaging what the sea had preserved for centuries. Meanwhile, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities coordinated with conservation experts. Fragile metals required immediate treatment once removed from salt water. Wooden timbers had to remain submerged until placed in specialized tanks. Even woven fibers needed meticulous care. Each artifact was tagged, logged, and photographed in its original position before removal. The race was not only against time, but against human impact and climate change. Rising seas, coastal erosion, and unregulated diving pose threats as dangerous as earthquakes. Heracleion had survived disaster once. Preserving it now demanded vigilance on a global scale. What still sleeps beneath the bay? For all that has been revealed, archaeologists agree. They have barely touched the surface. Surveys show that only a fraction of Heracleion has been excavated. Beneath layers of oxygen-starved clay lie anomalies that sonar cannot fully explain. Straight lines, right angles, and evenly spaced features hinting at buried streets and districts still untouched. Some of these formations appear to trace what would have been the ancient waterfront, suggesting entire docks, warehouses, and ceremonial structures remain sealed below. Shipwrecks, too, are expected in greater numbers. Ancient records describe convoys of merchant vessels entering and leaving Heracleion, yet only a handful of hulls have been found. Given the preservation conditions of Abukir Bay, low oxygen, stable temperatures, such ships may rest nearly intact. The challenge is not just in locating them, but in approaching them without harm. Disturbing deep sediment too quickly could shatter fragile remains. Seasonal shifts in visibility, temperature, and currents complicate every dive. Patience, researchers emphasize, is the only way forward. For Frank Gaudio and his team, the city's silence is both a gift and a burden. Heracleion has waited more than 2,000 years. Rushing could destroy what disaster spared. Somewhere beneath the mud, more stories wait. The daily lives of traders, priests, soldiers, and families frozen in the moment the city fell. Heracleion was not just swallowed by the sea, it was erased by forces that remain alive today. Its rediscovery is both triumph and warning. The ruins whisper that no city, however mighty, is beyond collapse. Beneath calm waters, history waits, reminding us of our own fragility.